Good morning. Welcome. I call this second meeting of the Budget Review Subcommittee on Education to order. Before we get started with things, I would like for us to take a moment of silence in memory of Senator Buford. So if we could at this time, let's take that moment of silence. Thank you, everybody. So at this time, we'll have Amy call the roll.
Senator Kerr, Senator Parrott, Senator Wise, Representative Banta,
Here in the 63rd.
Representative Bojanowski,
Here in the room.
Representative Bridges,
In the room.
Representative Fleming,
Present in the room.
Representative Flood, Representative McCool,
Here in the room.
Representative Miller, Representative Palumbo,
Here in my annex office.
Senator McDaniel, Representative Petrie, Representative Reed, Representative Huff,
Joining you from the 82nd District.
Senator West, Representative Tipton,
Present in the room.
Chair Riley.
President in the room. Thank you, everyone. And at this time, if we could approve the minutes from the June 2nd meeting. We got a motion from Representative Fleming and second by Representative Tipton. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we have approved the minutes. Today we're going to have an overview of federal pandemic relief funding and full-day kindergarten. I thought these were two issues that were obviously very big in last session, and we wanted to try to get an idea of what schools and how they're using the extra money from the federal government and the CARES Act, and as far as it relates to public school funding. And obviously we passed the bill last year to go from half-day kindergarten to funding full-day kindergarten. So I thought those were a couple of issues I thought we needed to have some discussion on. And Robin, if you could set the stage, and then we'll get our other guests up here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Riley. Good morning. It's great to see all of you in person here at the Annex. I'll do some brief introductions first. My name is Robin Kinney. I'm the Associate Commissioner in the Office of Finance and Operations at the Kentucky Department of Education. To my left, I have Karen Worth. Karen is our Budget Director at KDE. And also from KDE, we have online Dr. Kelly Foster, who is joining us. Karen and Kelly are here and available to answer questions as we move along. For today's presentation, Representative Riley has set us up nicely. We're going to talk a little bit about the COVID relief funds that have come from the federal government. In today's presentation, we're going to do a little bit of alphabet soup here. We're going to talk about ESSER 1, 2, and ARPSR. That is the Elementary and Secondary Schools Relief Fund. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the Governor's Emergency Education Fund, which is GEAR, and we have GEAR 1 and 2. And then, time permitting, we'll talk a little bit about EANS. EANS is the emergency assistance to non-public schools, since some of you all may have questions from your particular districts about EANS. We are not going to talk about some funding that came through the Coronavirus Relief Fund, the Capital Construction Fund, or the Pandemic Emergency Electronic Benefits Funds. But if you have questions about those, we'll be happy to answer those for you later, just in the interest of time, trying to focus on the really big pots of money. We are also pleased to have superintendents with us today that are going to be talking really about the uses of those funds at their local districts. These funds are very flexible in nature, and so we thought it best for you to hear from the folks that are really implementing the use of these funds at the local level. So I'm going to defer a lot of that to them to share with you a little bit later in the presentation. Karen, if you can pull up our slide deck and head to the first slide. Wait just a second. Here we go. Okay, so just the first slide is to give you the context of the funds that are coming into Kentucky. Kentucky, like other states in the nation, did receive significant funds to battle the coronavirus relief. And about $3.1 billion has come to Kentucky from the 3 ESSER rounds of funding. Kentucky public school districts also received $30 million from the Gear 1 fund and are also benefiting from some of the Gear 2 funding, even though it's not a direct appropriation to KDE on behalf of the districts. $15 million of that from Gear 2 has been appropriated to Frisky's program, which many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with and are housed in our local districts. On this slide, I've also included the date of the enactment, and then you'll see the outside date, which is the last date that expenditure of funds can occur for our local districts. And you'll see they are staggered. We start with the first level of funding through September 2022. The second then staggers to 2023. And the last round will be available for funding through September 30th of 2024. Additionally, we've put a link at the bottom so that you can quickly access and look at your particular districts and how much have been allocated to each district from each of these pots of money. I thought we would start off with just kind of the general overarching provisions that you'll see applicable to all the funds. It's really important that districts and KDE as well look at these funds and the use of these funds through the lens of they need to be used to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus pandemic. 90% of the allocations from ESSER 1, 2, and ARPSR go to our local school districts. So we send that in the terms of reimbursement to our districts. They expend those dollars and then ask for federal drawdown requests. A little unusual for federal funds, that can be used retroactive. So for eligible expense, they can actually go back to March 13th of 2020. There are some reasons for local school districts that's not always a practical application to do, but it is permissible that they do that. You also may be familiar with supplement, not supplant provisions. You know, the federal government, of course, is interested in making sure that states continue to provide that level of support to our local school districts. But for this pot of money, supplement, not supplant provisions do not apply. But, and I've put a big however there, because there's still maintenance of effort requirements, really important for us to keep in mind, and maintenance of effort for other federal funding pots. So when we talk about IDEA, you know, they're looking for that maintenance of effort to continue. Very, very important. Equitable services are typically a part of the Title I program, and you'll see that as part of federal funding. But that's only applicable for our local school districts from the ESSER 1 pot. And this is where we have the other program that KDE is currently operating. It's called EANS. That's the Equitable Services provisions that we are applying at the state level. And my apologies, on the bottom of this slide, it says, in parentheses, ESSER 2 and ARPSR. That should be Gear 1 and Gear 2. So those are actually coming out of the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund. So quickly, let's go through the permissible uses of some of our ESSER funds. Very broad in application. You know, every one of our school districts have different needs and unique opportunities for their respective students, staff, and their communities. And so there are broad permissible uses. Activities that really focus on any of the permissible activities under ESSA and IDEA, Adult Ed, Carl D. Perkins, and anything that is permissible under those acts, you can also expend your ESSER dollars for. And then, of course, there's importance placed upon implementing those public health protocols from the CDC, always in place. Also, and I'm going to go through these slides fairly quickly. Again, this is language from the particular acts, not all inclusive, because as we continue to talk to the U.S. Department of Ed and ask questions, they are giving us additional guidance and direction on use of funds, but still looking at improving in these areas. So again, looking at sanitizing, PPE that still need to be purchased. And we are thinking all the way back to when the coronavirus pandemic first came upon us. So, of course, things have evolved over time about the importance of what you need when. Repairing and improving school facilities. So HVAC, we've heard a little bit about that being available. Looking at the needs of children, different types of student groups and addressing their specific and particular needs. And trying to implement activities during those long-term closures that we had. So we all heard about the heroic efforts of our food service staff and our transportation folks. And so you could use ESSER funds to pay for that as well. And then finally, technology, a really, really important expenditure, permissive expenditure during the pandemic to really get those students and staff equipped for technology and remote learning. Mental health services and supports have become increasingly visible, the need to try to address some of that on behalf of our students and staff. And then looking at summer learning and moving really toward that, the impact of the coronavirus on our students. So learning loss and continuing our services. And it's important to note, as with all federal dollars, all the cost has to be reasonable and necessary as the expenditures move forward. So where are we as of June 25th of this year? Have included this slide so you can see the allocation, and this is what's directly going into our districts, back to that 90% that we talked about. The allocation, and it is reimbursement based, so this is how much is left in each of the pots of money and the total paid out to date. So you'll see ESSER 1, almost 80% has been expended already by our local school districts. ESSER 2, really in May was when they really had a deadline to submit their assurances and their spending plans. So they are getting started on that, and we expect to see some expenditures hitting that with the summer learning that's going on this summer from our school districts. ARP is really just getting started. So none of that has been paid out today. Districts are in progress right now of preparing their spending plans and assurances for submission and access to those dollars. And then I had mentioned the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund. About 82% of that already expended, and that fund was actually dedicated to two specific purposes: technology and food service. So when we think about when Gear 1 came to us, we were really in that mode of needing to have Chromebooks in hands of students and deliver those meals to our students. So 82% of that already expended. We talked a little bit about kind of the general provisions and what was applicable to all, and I wanted to kind of highlight some provisions of ESSER 2 and ARPSR that are a little different than ESSER 1. So from ESSER 2, we do have a state set aside. Remember that 90% is going to our district. We have a state set aside. We've been using those funds for various purposes, some of which are assisting our Kentucky School for the Deaf, the Kentucky School for the Blind, and our area technology centers. So those are all state agency run entities, and so we're helping them with efforts to respond to the coronavirus. And then out of our state set aside, we did something that was discretionary on the part of the state. We actually set aside another opportunity for our school districts to access this money. And so we came up with a couple of criteria. 85% of the district's allocation, so 85% of their 90% that was awarded to them, if they use that on direct services to support students, and by April 1st, and on an ongoing basis, offer that in-person instruction to students. At that time, we still didn't have people back in in-person instruction. So we were working toward encouraging that and allowing another access to another pot of money to do that. So we do have 127 districts that took advantage of this opportunity, and about $38 million of that state set aside will be going to those districts as well. Once they receive that, they can use that funding for any permissible purpose under the ESSER, any of the ESSER funds. Also to share with you sort of what we've been doing at the state level, state-funded initiative examples, and I'll just reference a couple of those. Of course, with the remote learning, bandwidth and the need for expanded bandwidth really increased, so we're using some of our state money to support that. new teacher support grants to districts, and we've put a couple other items on there for you to take a look at as far as how we're spending money at the state level. ARPSR is the most recent pot of funding that's coming to us, and it looks different than the first two. There are some state reservations that really direct how we should reserve some of our dollars and spend it with a certain purpose in mind. At the state level, we need to spend 5% of the total state allocation for implementation of evidence-based interventions, specifically aimed at addressing learning loss, and then it gives some examples. We also must reserve 1% for evidence-based summer enrichment and 1% for evidence-based comprehensive after-school programs. So we didn't have those kind of reservations in the earlier pots, but we see this now. An evidence-based intervention is one that is founded in the demonstration of statistically significant effect on improving student outcomes. So we're really looking for that research-focused type of evidence-based materials in order to either indicate that statistically we could be successful with student outcomes or likely to be successful. There's also a meaningful consultation with stakeholders requirement and maintenance of equity. If we can go to the next slide, Karen, because we'll talk about these kind of different new terms at the district level as well. The district has to reserve at least 20% of their funds to measure and address academic impact of lost instructional time on students. And then we see that word again, evidence-based interventions. And we also see these new terms, meaningful consultation and maintenance of equity. So meaningful consultation under ARPSR requires both the state and the district to have those reach out to their communities and certain stakeholders and really ask for their input and feedback. And districts are currently doing that. The state has also done that at KDE. There's also a new requirement on maintenance of equity. And basically we're looking at those high poverty schools and high poverty districts as determined by a process that USAID has shared with us to determine those. And they're trying to make sure that there are no reductions to those high poverty districts or high poverty schools in two areas, and that's funding and staffing, and making sure that if you're making a reduction, you don't make a bigger cut to those high poverty schools than you would across the board. So this is a new requirement for districts and the state, and it's called maintenance of equity. So you'll probably be hearing more about that. Districts are currently in the process of doing assurances and spending plans for ARPSR. We touched on this a little earlier in the presentation. This is Gear 1 and Gear 2. Just sharing again that $30 million that we talked about previously to support both technology and food service, but I also wanted to include what the Gear 2 funding is going toward. Although KDE and our local school districts didn't receive a direct appropriation out of that, that's where you see the $15 million that's going to our Family Resource Youth Services Centers. And there's also some career and college counselor. So even though not a direct appropriation to our school districts, we certainly will reap the benefits from that in an indirect manner. And then finally, I just put this in case you might have some questions from constituents in your districts about EANS. It is the Emergency Assistance to Non-Public Schools. And under Gear 1 and Gear 2, the Department of Education is actually administering and implementing that on behalf of non-public schools. EANS 1, and you'll see the amounts there, $40 million. EANS, EANS 1, $40 million. EANS 2, $42 million. We have not received that allocation yet. We will have an application process to apply for those funds to come down. We have started dispersing this week money to the non-public schools out of EANS 1, and we'll wait on the application for EANS 2. So that's kind of what we had prepared to share with you about the different pots of money. Full day kindergarten, we have prepared a slide on here. As Representative Riley noted, $140 million was appropriated to the department to provide that full day kindergarten funding. Previously, under statute, we funded that on a half day AADA. And so this allows full funding for that for all of our 171 districts. They are all intending, based upon a survey that we did, on offering that full day kindergarten in the fall. And my understanding is we have other guests here. They're going to talk about full day kindergarten at the district level. So we'll defer to them to share with you how they're handling that. And that's really that's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Thank you, Robin. And we have a few questions. Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Chair. Robin, appreciate you always give a very detailed report. Question on the term maintenance of effort. Could you give a little more explanation of what's involved in maintenance of effort and required?
Mm-hmm. So maintenance of effort, of course, the federal government is looking to make sure that we appropriately, as a state, maintain certain levels of funding so that we're not using their funds and basically paying for general fund expenses here. And so they set a baseline for us. And so as we expend going forward, they compare it back to that baseline number to make sure we are kind of keeping our end of the bargain.
Mr. Chair, I have another follow-up question.
Yes, you may.
You had mentioned that I believe some of the GEARS fund went to supplement the Friskies program.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, as I understand now, is that a pass-through KDE to Health and Family Services, or is that a direct appropriation from KDE?
It is actually not coming through KDE. It's gone from the governor's office, who is the recipient of GEAR, directly to the Cabinet for Health and Family Services.
Sure.
We have other funding, as you're aware, and
Yeah.
it does come to KDE first, and then we pass
Sure,
through
it's
to
a
the
pass-through,
Cabinet.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
If I could ask a question,
Mm-hmm.
why do we have why do we have money for Friskies going into two departments? It's a question I've always wondered, because I know KDE receives the fund and then it's passed through to Health and Family Services.
I really don't know the answer to that question. I will share with you that we have wondered the same thing, because we literally take that money and, as directed, we pass that through to the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, and then they manage the actual process of distribution of funds to our local school districts. So I'm sorry I can't answer that question why it happens that way, but that's how it happens.
Thank you, Representative Tipton. Representative Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering, I know there's stipulations on how this money can be spent. Is there a possibility of it being spent on one-time funding for like hire-on bonuses and things like that? I noticed on the news last night, Jefferson County has a severe shortage, as well we do in the western part of the state too. And I didn't know if any of that can be used for bonuses and stimulus to.
Yeah. So I appreciate very much the question and your emphasis on a one-time non-recurring event, because we think that is an important distinction, making sure that we're talking about this is federal funds and it will go away at some point. So bonuses are a permissible expenditure. However, you have to look at that in the context of what it's for. So the Kentucky Constitution, as well as Kentucky statutes, talk about the ability to give bonuses or give even to increase your salary based upon, and you have to look forward. So some of the questions that have come to us are, our staff did a great job last year. They did a wonderful job, heroic efforts. Can we give them a bonus, almost like a thank you bonus? And that's not permissible. But if you identify certain job responsibilities going forward, and that's included looking forward, you can. So it's important that our districts think about looking forward, not looking backwards, even though we are all so appreciative of the work that they've done today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bridges. Representative Bojanowski.
Yes, thank you very much. Can any of this money be used to increase the number of pre-K slots that we have? Or just preschool? I mean,
Yes.
just to be funding more preschool
Yes,
education.
the funds can be used for those preschool, early childhood efforts. Again, if you're thinking about adding more positions, you can certainly add new positions.
Right.
We just are very cautious in making sure that once the federal dollars go away, that you have a way to continue to fund those once you've established those. But
Funding
yes,
the teachers.
Yes, but
Right.
absolutely it can be used for those early childhood initiatives.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
With Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Robin.
Hi.
Thanks for your presentation. I wanted to just follow up on what you said a few minutes ago about, I guess measurements and so forth. What type of accountability processes are in play from an audit point of view to make sure the funds are appropriate to those programs? And I guess who would be accountable for doing all that?
So we are still learning about exactly what is going to be audited by the federal government, but we do have processes in place that we look at the use of funds across the department typically. So for each of our school districts, they submit an assurance document about appropriate use of funds, and they submit a spending plan to us. They can revise that spending plan as things roll along, but that's the first steps for them. They also provide a quarterly report to us on expenditures of funds, which is done in our GMAP system, our grants management system. And we also have another area of our department that's looking, Dr. Kelly Foster and her office, they're looking at expenditure of funds. They will actually do their audits and reviews from a consolidated monitoring perspective. So we'll actually have people that are out looking at how expenditures are made, as well as Karen staff. Karen staff is the Division of Budgets, and they're looking at it as well. School districts also have independent financial audits done each year, and we receive their audited financial reports. So there'll be lots of people looking at these dollars and how expenditures are made, as well as I'm sure the Auditor of Public Accounts will be looking at it as well.
So is there a time frame for these funds to be expensed? And then I cannot remember what that time frame is. Could you comment on that?
On the very first slide, I think, of our presentation.
Okay.
It's a rolling timeline. So with the first round of funding, it's in September of 2022.
Gotcha.
The second round
Got it.
is
Okay.
September 2023, and the third round September of 2024.
Okay, and I apologize.
That's okay.
I'll overlook that. So, okay, well, yeah, is there a possibility, I guess, when will you start, I guess, going through and validating the funds are expended correctly and appropriately? And then will that be available to the committee and to the General Assembly or LRC in terms of what you just discovered or and such?
So absolutely, we have a very transparent process with all our school districts. Actually, I think we have already started a pilot program of monitoring the first round of funding. So we already have folks that are looking at how expenditures are being made out of the CARES Act, which is the first round of funding. So yes, that is available. We're very transparent. We post lots of information on our website, and we'll be happy to provide that as it rolls in.
Well, good. Thank you for being on top of it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Fleming. Robin, thank you for your presentation. And
Thank you.
you guys are going to hang around if we need any more questions or
We
anything
will
later.
we will hang around. We're now going to turn the presentation over to Superintendent Houston Barber from Frankfort Independent.
This is Sen Prayer. Can I ask one question real quick?
Yes, Senator Perry, go ahead and ask a question.
And I apologize if I missed this statistic, but my understanding is it is $15 million to the Friskies, correct?
That's
Proposed?
correct. That's out of Gear 2, yes.
Okay, and I missed what the amounts were for the School for the Deaf and Blind.
We'd have to get back to you to answer that
Okay.
question, but we can share with you out of the state set aside the dollars that are going to KSB and KSD. We'll be happy to provide that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you,
You're
Senator Perry. And Senator, Representative Fleming wants to ask one real quick question.
Thank you. Raman, if you wouldn't mind, I heard a testimony yesterday about Jefferson County Superintendent saying that these are thank you bonuses. Could you follow up? And I'm going to call up Marty, see, making sure that it was just a slip of tongue. I
Yeah.
understand his intent, but I just want to make sure that's not the case.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Did you? Great.
Second. I think from the structure of how the bonuses are going to be issued, it's very clear that they're going to be incentive bonuses because you don't get one when school starts this year. You don't get it all. There are like 3 specific time periods over which you get the bonus. So it's to encourage teachers to, I mean, this is going to be a really shaky year for having staffing across the board in education. And so I believe one's in the fall, one's in I don't remember the dates, but they're over the course of the year. So I think that really supports it being more of an incentive as opposed to a thank you bonus.
Okay, I just want to make sure that he
Yeah.
understands that. And
Yeah,
all
I'm
the
sure,
terminology and so forth.
And my understanding is that as well, it is forward-looking, it is not backward-looking, even though, staff will have additional responsibilities. And so I think Jefferson County has structured it that way as an incentive for those additional responsibilities for the future year.
If I could just add on one little
Yes.
point. I appreciate your clarification on why it has to be there because there's some pushback from educators who may have retired saying, hey, I really worked hard during the pandemic. Why don't I? So understanding that in statute it has to be that way might help me explain that to them. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And Dr. Barber and Superintendent Ballinger, please come up. If you guys could introduce yourself for the record, okay?
Good morning. My name is Houston Barber. I am the superintendent at Frankfort Independent Schools. Today I'm representing Kentucky Association of School Superintendents as their president.
Good morning. I'm Carrie Ballinger, superintendent of Rockcastle County Schools. Thank you for having me this morning.
Thank you.
Appreciate being here, and Representative Riley, I understand the role of the school principal. I know how much you care about that and passionate about it, as well as the many school districts you've worked with, and as a previous principal can understand how you want to know about the impact of what's happening directly to our students. So really, in generality, I just wanted to speak that we have 3 superintendents today that are going to get into greater detail. We have, of course, Carrie with us from Rockcastle County. We have Matt Robbins from Davies County, and we have Tom Cochran from Johnson County. But what I wanted to speak about briefly is that we are focused on these one-time expenditures, knowing that they are not recurring revenue. I think strategically our superintendents have been very focused on that, understanding that we have to have immediate impact on our students. And of course, that has to help support our teachers and staff as they work with our students. Some of the things that you'll hear about today, but also that I want to hone in on directly, are that we've been very focused, and I've talked to a lot of superintendents throughout the state, as well as those today present, on summer programming, also on summer supports, and after-school programming, instructional technology, also the people side of supporting our students, and as well as having family connections. The strategy planning and execution of that has to be with precision. We have been expanding our mental health supports. I will say, when I think about it, we've been targeting kind of 3 different areas: the social emotional side and well-being of our students that has absolutely been impacted by this pandemic, and how to address it quickly, but also with sustainable practices. We also, many superintendents have been addressing academic planning, behavioral focus as well. How do we get kids back in classrooms, supporting their needs, their individual personalization and customization. In addition to that, we've provided some tutoring supports throughout the Commonwealth and many of our districts. And then we're focused on access to opportunity. Many of our kids missed out on opportunities throughout the pandemic, and we want to bring about those opportunities for our kids so that learning takes place and is very focused on their passions and committed to their passions throughout the Commonwealth. So just a few other things. I think along with the mental health supports, one of the things that facility safety, obviously in the first part of this, a lot of the funds were expended as a result of covering safety needs. everything from sanitizer to facial coverings to supporting classrooms and space so that kids had what they needed. Internet access, I can't even tell you how this has been supportive of that for kids that didn't have reach. We didn't have reach to. And to provide that reach cost, and there was money expended for supporting that, and I know there's more money coming that way. In addition, I think from a kindergarten's perspective, we're very thankful and excited about that opportunity. So we thank you on behalf of superintendents and districts, because we are focused on early childhood. And many of our districts had already been supporting kindergarten. What this has allowed us to do is to expand our offerings, promote early literacy, and increase the potential staffing for even pre-K. So that's exciting, and we hope this isn't just 1 year. We hope it is multiple, and it goes for many years to come. So we're very thankful for that. Finally, just want to say that we know these are I just want to reiterate, these are one-time expenses. So to promote the purchasing of staffing and to do it in a way that could cause what I would call maybe a front loading could lead to some detrimental challenges and sustainability problems if we just decided as districts to purchase staff. So a lot of these funds have not been purchased on additional staff per se, but have been pushing forward opportunities that exist currently, but expanding those and promoting additional responsibilities and summer school opportunities and even after school opportunities. So on behalf of KSS, just want to say thank you for allowing us to be here today. I think you'll enjoy our 3 presentations that are here. We have incredible superintendents throughout this Commonwealth, but these 3 are shining. And so I'm going to turn it over to my colleague and good friend, Ms. Ballinger.
Well, it's not sharing. Having us today. I'm excited to share the great things that are happening in Rockcastle County Schools. Again, my name is Carrie Ballinger. I am the superintendent of Rockcastle County. I want to start by focusing on that in addressing summer school this year, we really wanted to put an emphasis on addressing the whole child and taking into account all of the opportunities that our students have missed out on the past year, being academic, social, emotional learning, and just that opportunities to be engaged in learning, not only academic, but learning those social interactions with their peers. So we wanted to really bring back that opportunity over the summer for them and reimagine what school looked like. And it was important in Rockcastle County for us to draw our students back. Many of our students participated virtually this school year, and we wanted to reimagine school and get them excited and build that love of learning and bring them back to us. So we had a very intentional focus on a camp atmosphere. We targeted instruction at all 5 of our schools in the district. 600 students participated. We did a very balanced approach. We knew how important it was to address the learning loss that took place in mathematics and reading, but we wanted to provide enrichment as well. So in the afternoons, we had special offerings in music, art, fitness, technology, STEAM courses, and social and emotional learning. We had targeted small group instruction by over 120 staff members. And then we also provided individual and small group counseling on a daily basis. And that was very important for us to partner with our community partners to bring those offerings in for our students and make sure that we were meeting their needs as a whole, not just academically. So we were focusing on reigniting learning. We wanted to bring our students back in the building and make certain that they remembered all those wonderful things about school that they loved. We had targeted instruction at 3 elementary schools, and we utilized those research-based interventions using a literary camp and iReady Core Math, which were resources that we did purchase with those federal dollars. We had a partnership with Christian Appalachian Project to bring Camp Andrew Jackson on site for our students. So our students could not go to summer camp, so we brought summer camp to them. So daily in the afternoons, they had all of those camp experiences that you could imagine as when we were children and going to camp, but we brought that to them. We also did camp in a box that they were able to take home with them that provided STEM activities that they could do with their families, and drawing on how important it is to have that family support. And again, we had daily counseling in all of our elementary schools, and then we had those enrichment activities that took place. Again, just focusing on getting our students back in the school building and trying to address all of those needs that they had from being basically out of the school, many of them for over a year. And it's important. I wanted to show you just some pictures of our elementary students because as we're having these discussions, it's important to see that these are real students with real needs, academically, socially, and emotionally, and that we are doing, and our staff has done such an amazing, heroic effort of meeting their needs this summer. At the middle school and high school level, we had just a little bit different focus. We had to balance those students that needed credit recovery with also providing some enrichment activities for our students. So we focused again on rebranding in-person instruction. We want our kids to be excited about coming back to school. We had 175 high school students that focused on credit recovery. We had 18 seniors that earned their diploma this summer, so that's 18 students that would not have graduated had we not been able to provide these services. There were 244 credits recovered. In addition, we also targeted our students through an ACT boot camp. So we brought our juniors and seniors in that are upcoming juniors and seniors and worked with them on preparing for ACT. We provided career planning sessions for all of our high school and middle school students. We also offered a Gear Up summer camp with a STEM focus that 60 of our students participated in. And we did provide transportation for our students. And we traveled over 11,000 miles this summer at a cost of $50,000. Mental health supports were provided throughout with our school district counselors as also with community partners. And we did offer breakfast and lunch daily for all of our students, both elementary, middle, and high. And here you can see some of the activities that have taken place over the summer. And if you look closely at these pictures, you can see this is not clearly just academics. This is getting the entire child involved back in school and building on all of their skill sets. And I want to focus on the community partnerships that we were able to develop through the use of these funds. We had community feeding sites, and through the month of June alone, we have served over 11,000 meals to students in Rockcastle County. We also held the Rockcastle Regional Ability Walk, focusing on the ability of all of our students and not disabilities. We focused on another community event, the Longest Day of Play, focusing on getting our kids back involved in school activities. And once again, I've already spoke of this, but we brought the camp experience into our school buildings. In the month of July, we will also continue to be offering weekly meal pickups for our students using mostly locally sourced ingredients and materials, so we're really proud of that as well. And transitioning from summer to fall, so how are we going to use these monies to continue the learning that's taking place? We will be implementing a trauma plan at all of our schools. implementing positive behavior interventions, working on curricular alignment, and ensuring that we're providing Tier 1 instruction, research-based instruction for all of our students. And with these funds, we're able to provide more professional development for our teachers and for our staffing to ensure that that's taking place. We do have a strong focus on mental health supports. We will be utilizing 3 new additional positions to focus on that. One will be middle, high school, and elementary focus. We are also looking at a comprehensive literary program implementation and other implementations just to focus on, again, not only academics, but also making certain that we're approaching the whole child and meeting their needs. Okay. Anyone have questions about summer learning?
Any questions? Representative Fleming?
Thank you, Ms. Ballinger. I appreciate your description of what's going on in Rock Castle, and I appreciate your mentioning on a couple occasions social as well as mental health issues and so forth. And that seems to be, at least where I'm from, Jefferson County, a significant issue and a challenge in terms of addressing not only the child but also the family in its totality, or holistically speaking. Could you give us an idea how much money on a percentage basis you spend on mental health? And can you also comment on the south and southeast portion of the Commonwealth, obviously where you're from, to give you a perspective on, I guess, the mental health challenges the kids gone through in terms of not only going through the pandemic but also coming out, and how they're dealing with this?
Certainly.
Thank you.
But prior to the pandemic, we had school counselors in each of our school buildings that were focused on social emotional learning of our students. But after we have experienced the pandemic, we found that just was not enough to be able to target the needs. So we did commit, prior to receiving any federal funding, we committed to hiring a mental health coordinator for our district. And as she started in that position, we found that she could not cover the needs as well. So with the federal funding, we are adding two additional staff members to assist in that. And we are finding that is a huge piece of the component right now. Our principals are overwhelmed and our teachers are overwhelmed. And as you all know, students cannot begin to learn. We cannot address the academic side until we address the social emotional learning side. So we have a partnership with Rockcastle Regional Hospital through telehealth services that we are also providing mental health supports through that. We also have a partnership with Somerset Mental Health where those counselors are coming into our school to provide services. We have developed a survey system that we are providing to all middle and high school students with parental support and parental them giving us permission to do so, that we are asking questions so we can go ahead and ensure that we are addressing those needs on the front end, that we're not waiting until something traumatic has happened, that we are addressing needs up front. So we have that in place, and that we will be targeting each middle school and high school student that comes out with some sort of flag that needs additional attention.
Well, I appreciate your preventative care and being proactive with that. Did I catch you saying that you've hired somebody on the money that came in from the feds, and how are you going to sustain that?
Yes. So we have, and we were also one of the districts that received the Frisky grant, and through the Frisky grant, we had written that grant to use that for staffing.
Okay.
So in 2 of the positions that we've hired, we have put a 2-year time limit on it.
Okay.
To see, of course, to correlate with the timeline of the federal funding ending.
And cross your fingers to keep that going, because it's
Exactly.
not a 2-year deal. It's like a 5 or 6 or longer year. But thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Fleming. Representative Bojanowski?
Yes, so it all sounds so amazing. I'm a special ed elementary teacher, so I mean, every bit of this is near and dear to my heart. Do you think that, COVID has been horrible and detrimental, but maybe some good things will come out of it? Do you think this is the type of programming that you might try to repeat every summer?
Absolutely. COVID has been a terrible year for school systems, there's no doubt, but you can also see a lot of light. It has forced us to think differently, and it has forced us to implement things that we may not have done otherwise. And so I think it's important now, as we turn the corner moving into the future, that we really reflect and think about what went well during the past year? What did we learn, and how can we implement that into the future to ensure that our learning is stronger for our students?
Thank you, Representative Bojanowski. Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Ballinger. Appreciate the fantastic work you're doing in Rockcastle County. It's obvious that your team, your teachers and staff are passionate about your students. One thing in particular that I took note of was the emphasis on the Tier 1 instruction.
Yes.
And that is so vital, and I appreciate you, especially in the reading, the literacy, the mathematics, especially with the younger children, and getting them prepared to be able, when they get up into higher grade levels and need to comprehend. I appreciate that. And I've worked on some legislation with this in the past. I want to ask you a question about how well equipped do you see your teachers at being able to offer this Tier 1 instruction, and what additional supports do you think might be necessary to help them improve in Tier 1 instruction in these areas?
Thank you for that question. I do also agree that if we are going to close learning gaps and achievement gaps, we have to focus on Tier 1 instruction. We cannot use response to intervention to cover all of these gaps. Every student deserves the opportunity for core grade level instruction. So that is our focus in Rockcastle County. But in reference to your question, we have an initiative, and we're going to be working with all of our teachers this year to go back and revisit the standards. I think that it's time that we need to go back and look at that and work on standards work and curriculum mapping work. It's just so much. It was always important, but it's even more important now if we're going to close these learning gaps. So we have created a long-range, year-long range plan that we will be working with all of the teachers in the district, elementary, middle, and high school, and we are going to be tackling that work this summer, starting this summer, moving into the next school year of curriculum mapping and core planning, and ensuring that we are teaching standards and that we really know what that means, that we have dug into that work and we know exactly what that means and what standards should be taught at each grade level. And then we're going to be building those resources and tagging those resources on, but not starting with resources first, starting with the standards first.
Yeah, one quick.
So along with Rep. Tipton, I've been doing a lot of research into this, and the consensus among academics is that the standards are really good at telling us what we should teach, and not as informative about telling us how we can teach it. I'm sure that's going to be a part of your conversation, but I'm just suggesting that you consider that how piece as relevant as what the standards are.
Absolutely, and we want to make sure that we're using research-based teaching strategies, and that we really know what those mean. What are Marzano strategies, and how do we know what that means, and how are we going to use that to ensure the standards are being taught properly?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your presentation very much. And at this time, we'll have Matt Robbins, Superintendent of Davis County Schools, and I imagine Matt, you and Amy Shutt, Assistant Superintendent of Davis County Schools, are probably going to do your presentation together. And to let you guys know, we have 35 minutes till we have to be finished with this committee meeting. We need to be finished by 12:30 because we have more to come today. So just be aware. Matt, are you online?
Yes. Just want to test my audio and visual here and make sure that you all can hear me.
We can
adequately.
hear you.
Oh, great. Super. And also Dr. Shutt, as you mentioned, has joined me. She's my Assistant Superintendent for Human Services, and I asked her to join me today because she's done the vast preponderance of this work. And from the outset here, I just want to thank you, Chair Riley, and all the legislators who are joining us here today for your service to the Commonwealth and certainly to the children of Kentucky. From a global picture here, and we're going to try to make sure we get the slides up here so that you can see those.
Mr. Robbins, we're waiting for the other one to come down. There we go.
There we go.
There.
Awesome. Okay, super. So just as Ms. Ballinger spoke to you, I think all the school districts have done a great job at thinking 360 degrees around each child. And that's been the focus of ours. Today, we're talking to you about mental health. What I will tell you is I have 2 children that are enrolled in the Davis County school system. And so I saw the pandemic, its effects on children, both inside my household and certainly through our children. We're fortunate that we were able to see our kids for most of the year in some type of learning mode. We were in a hybrid learning mode for the most of the year. And then the last 9 weeks, we had children all 5 days of school. But that was a very telling experience for us. We knew that we had gaps in our coverage, even pre-pandemic. But we felt like that we had the opportunity with the ESSER funds to make a big adjustment in the mental health area. And so that's where we're going. Now, with the presentation that we have for you today, we're going to show you the before, so you can see what our coverage map looked like prior to the addition of additional staff. And then we'll show you what that would look like come August 11th, which is our first day for our students here in Davis County. So with that in mind, Dr. Shutt, if you would walk us through the first slide that we have.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing us to be with you today and tell you about the great things that are happening in Davis County. In Davis County, we strive to put kids first and effectively support our staff so that they can effectively support our students and serve them every day. So I'm excited to share what we have going on in Davis County. I feel like it's some of the most important work we will do. To give you an idea of where we were, in 2021, we had counselors in every school. We had 2 counselors in every middle school, 4 in every high school, but we also had the ability to fund 4.2 student assistance coordinators. And in Davis County, we call the mental health therapist student assistance coordinators. But you can see across there that those student assistant coordinators were covering multiple schools and a very large load of students. Those numbers that you see with the 4.2 student assistance coordinators do not identify student services students because we have 2 that also service them. 3 years ago, we employed our first district social worker and discovered what a huge impact that could be. We knew we needed one, but like most positions, when you hire the person, it can become so much more. And we felt like we wanted to look at even how we could grow that position. We also are very fortunate in that we have 18 Family Resource Center coordinators and advocates. So you can see we did have, quite a large service map there. But as we were working on a few things, about 3 years ago, we started working on trauma quite a bit. And that came into play because as we implemented PBIS, we were seeing a large number of students who also were experiencing trauma, and that was a huge barrier to them every day in their learning. And so we reached out with some grants, and we were able to work with the University of Kentucky Center for Trauma and Children, and we have 6 trauma trainers as well as 10 trauma team members. We also have 6 members that through another grant we trained for mental health first aid. So we were doing lots of things. We had counselors in every school. We had trauma trainers and mental health, but we were still meet all of the needs that we had. And the federal money came along, and we decided that we could look at how do we expand that to meet those needs that we have. And so we started with guidance of a plan, and I'm going to let Mr. Robbins talk about really when we looked at the federal money, how we wanted to be intentional about how we spent that.
All right, so Dr. Shutt and I planned time in my office for us to begin discussion on this about, it was really an opportunity for us to review where we were, some of the gaps that we had in our program, and then how we could make that much better for the future. So you see here, there's about 10 different items were goals, objectives that we itemized we wanted to achieve. Currently, our student assistance coordinators are itinerant, and for that reason, they do spend a fair amount of time commuting from one school to the next. And so our service time between servicing children, time on student, we recognize that needed to be reduced substantially. We also wanted to go to a much more preventative model versus a reactive model in meeting the needs of our students. consistent coverage for schools. One of the things that we really focused on was trying to think about, families and how they live with an elementary age child, a middle school age child, and perhaps a high school age child, and the fact that sometimes those are familial issues, and tried to establish a network based upon our school feeder patterns about how we did that. Another goal we set is we wanted to, based on our current caseload, is we wanted every child to have at least an opportunity for 30 minutes per week that were assigned to our caseload. And then we knew that we maybe needed some flexibility because of still the unexpected needs of our children. We needed a model that was adaptive pretty quickly, so that if we needed more personnel in the student assistance coordinator area, we had the chance to do that. I think one of the things that Dr. Barber addressed was sustainability. So the big concern there was how would we sustain this new level of service, and it would become the expectation of our schools and our community. Well, the good thing is the individuals that we were able to hire and all these additional positions that were created in the mental health realm are Medicaid billable, meaning that at the end of the ESSER funding cycle in 2024, we would have the ability to bill for service based upon Medicaid eligibility. So we feel like going into this that we have a good model. We'll be able to try all that out before we know the finality of that. And then the last thing is just additional family support. We know that mental health across the United States, certainly the Commonwealth of Kentucky and the County of Davis, is an extraordinary need. Not only, again, post-pandemic, but pre-pandemic. The pandemic has accelerated that. And so our goal here is to not only impact our school district, but certainly the County of Davis with the plan that we've developed.
So this is the plan that we will use going forward. And I also want to bring up at this time, we also aren't just looking at the needs of our students, but we also have a partnership with Owensboro Health that allows us to provide mental health counseling for our staff. And we have seen a significant rise in that support and usage, but we will continue to do that for our staff as well. So in our new plan moving forward, we will move to 8 student assistance coordinators, mental health therapists, which brings their caseload down to 33, and our goal was to get it under 35. We will keep one of our veteran social worker who she has a priority for the Family Resource Center, and she will also work with students who transition from facility to make sure that we provide them the best opportunity to get settled and learn in their home school when they return. We will have 3 social workers that will service our feeder patterns. So that will mean that they will have 4 elementary schools and 1 middle school, and then help support our high schools. And this puts us at an increase of over 120% for our mental health therapy support. And this all comes to play with our 3 different rounds of money. And so everything that we have is being supported that way for this first year, but we will move to other funding beyond that. We reduced the caseloads for our mental health therapist at the elementary with a very strong emphasis on preventative model. They will do a lot of collaboration with the guidance counselors and with the social workers to create a team approach there. We have 1 coordinator at our district level who his main focus is on the MTSS of Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 for social emotional learning. And we also have 1 district counselor coach who is the support for our guidance counselors to help them at the school level as well. The 7 mental health providers that we've been able to hire this year are all LCSWs or LPCCs, so we feel very fortunate. Something that is not seen in those credentials necessarily is their diverse background. We were very intentional with our hires on our new mental health therapists, because when we were able to sit around the table with them, we wanted to have a diverse group that came from different backgrounds and different area of expertise, so that as different issues and concerns came up in our district, that we would have a kind of a think tank to be able to problem solve there. Mr. Robbins mentioned it, but as you know, we anticipate that we may see needs pop up greater in one school than the other. And we wanted a plan that would allow us to move those people within those feeder patterns where relationships were already built, and we could increase the service to students without having to wait and post and find someone to fill a new position. So we can backfill on positions now and increase the services to students without a lapse in time frame there. So in relation to Senate Bill 1 of 2019, I wanted to give you a comparison of what the mental health plans look like in Davis County. You can see at the top, when we look at school counselors to students, we were at 425 for every one. When we include our mental health therapists who service those schools, we're at 33 to 1. But I want to stress too how important we feel like the Family Resource and Youth Service Center coordinators and advocates are in our district. Many of them are also credentialed social workers. So when we think about how we support our students and families, we look at that whole pictures of our counselors, our mental health therapists, and our Friskies. And so even in 2021, we have that at 221 to 1. But we still knew that the needs were increasing and we needed to make a huge difference, and we wanted to be very strategic about how we did that. So moving forward, if you just look at our numbers with school counselors to students, we're at 359 to 1. If you include our mental health therapists, we do reach that goal of 250 to 1. We are at 244 with our school counselors and mental health therapists to students. But if you look at that entire picture of how do we support our students and families in the social, emotional, and mental health area, we are at 157 students to every one of those people. And I think that will make a huge impact on our students. And it will that plan also allows us to be flexible and meet the needs as they arise. So the work in Davis County is not, the mental health emphasis is not new, but this money, the federal money, is allowing us to do more, and it is allowing us to meet needs that we would have had to wait to do. We were taking small steps, and this has allowed us to take a lot bigger step forward. The last thing that I want to kind of emphasize to you is to kind of show the importance of this work, and really what has come out as a product of that is Davis County will host our first mental health summit in August, and we're bringing national speakers to our area for 500 educators, and this is an absolutely free day that will focus on how to provide educators with strategies for working with students with mental health issues, and how do we just provide stronger cultures and climates in our schools so that kids are able to overcome barriers to learning. So we'll have 3 keynote speakers, and I'm very pleased that Superintendent Talora Slosser will be joining us for our keynote lunch that day. But we also have 20 breakout sessions that will also focus on the trauma-informed and the MTSS and mindfulness. And we'll work with administrators on how do you lead a school with a whole child approach. And this is all funded through grants and our work with Owensboro Health, and also our Giving Tuesday and our foundation. But when you look at where we were and where we are going with Davis County, we felt like this was an important day for us to provide, and we wanted to provide it free for them. So we think it's going to be an amazing day. In DCPS, we call this work the Umbrella Project, and we want to provide students with the skills to protect them from the storms in life. And allow them to be the best versions of themselves every day. And so we want them to develop resiliency so they can go out and shine on their own. And we are very excited about this work and what kind of impact it will make on our students and our staff and our community.
Thank you, Dr. Shutt. And just to emphasize here, Chair Riley, that in looking 360 degrees around the child, we looked at physical health, social, emotional, mental health, certainly behavioral needs of our students with PBIS, and then obviously academic needs. We know that when these types of issues are confronting our children and their families, the endeavor to educate them becomes much, much more difficult and challenging for us. So that's been a big focus of ours, as you can see. We'll now take any questions that you and the committee may have.
Thank you, Superintendent Robbins, and thank you, Dr. Shutt. And if we have any questions, Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Shutt and Superintendent Robbins, I just want to commend you for a very data-driven, but also compassionate and understanding of your student base there in Daviess County. I think it's a model I think should be replicated throughout the Commonwealth in terms of going through and setting up your priorities and getting the child in the forefront of trying to support them. A couple questions, if you don't mind. One, I assume this is embedded, but an important part of the process in providing mental health is psychological testing, or at least one component. I like to assume that y'all have that embedded in terms of going through and assessing the child where they are, so the counselor or the health care provider can set up a treatment plan to go about that. And then dovetailing that treatment plan, you mentioned briefly, but could you expand on taking the family from a holistic point of view in terms of bringing them in to help with that child through their trauma or through their stress and strain or financial straps, or even dealing with a parent being at home and now they're taken off and the child's still at home and such. So could you comment on those two things for me?
Okay, all of our student assistance coordinators are, trained to do the testing. One of our requirements is that they are knowledgeable and trained in the DSM-5. So that they can do that. Something that does not appear in this plan is we also have a full team of school psychologists in our district that we team with a lot, and we got a great amount of input from them on how we move forward with a very strategic and systemic way to address this. So they develop treatment plans for every student that they serve, and we work with the families on that as well. With our families, what we have seen, especially in the last 2 years, is a family may have a student at the elementary, the middle, and the high, and we have individual student assistance coordinators working with the individual child, but it may be a deeper rooted concern that we need to address, and they will work with the family to bring them in for family counseling because they are able to do that as well. And we have seen great advancements in that. That was a real kind of eye opener for us with our our social worker, of how much she spent time with counseling of families. And so we wanted to, increase that opportunity there. But the plan is devised like that so that we can address, if it is a greater family issue, we can work with the family resource and the social worker and the counselor at the school, as well as the student assistance coordinator. We wanted to look at a team approach so we weren't working in silos to address the same problem. We felt like we could be more effective as a team.
Bravo. That's a great response, and I appreciate your enthusiasm and a very thoughtful, mindful approach to making this thing happen. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Fleming. Thank you, Superintendent Robbins and Dr. Shutt. We appreciate your presentation so much. And at this time, we will turn it over to Superintendent Tom Cochran from the Johnson County Schools.
Thank you, Chair Riley. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. Good afternoon. My name is Tom Cochran. I am Superintendent of Johnson County Schools, currently serving as Vice President of the Kentucky Association of School Administrators or School Superintendents. First, I'd like to echo the words of gratitude
Mr. Cochran, we've lost you for a second. We can see you, but we can't hear you.
How about that?
Now we can hear you. Thank you.
All right. So I'm not sure how much you heard. I was thanking you, knowing I realized your time is valuable. We appreciate the opportunity, and I believe I can speak for everyone. I lost me again. All right. So I can speak for everyone. I can say we're grateful for your support of public education. And I especially want to recognize my representative, Bobby McCool, who sits on this committee. Representative McCool has worked tirelessly for the people whom he represents, and he continues to do an exceptional job supporting all of our area, our kids, our staff, our schools. I'm going to close today with a conversation focused on how the federal relief funds have been used to support instructional technology in public education, specifically here in Johnson County. As you all are well aware, the last school year has been a year like no other. It's been extremely difficult in many ways, with the main challenge for our public educators being trying to figure out how to teach our kids without having them with us face to face. However, on the flip side, this past year has allowed our students, teachers, administrators, and our families to improve greatly in the area of technology. The growth that I've witnessed with students' utilization of technology and with teachers' implementation of instructional tech in their daily lesson plans have been immense. Our teachers' instruction using these resources has greatly enhanced student access and is allowing our students to learn things that we previously thought unimaginable. As fantastic though as all of the available technology resources are, we know that most of them do not come without cost, sometimes with a significant cost. So as we were designing and rolling out our JC Click and Soar virtual learning plans over the past year, the most prevalent question that was asked of us was, how do we afford all of the instructional resources that will be required to provide the best educational experience for our students in this virtual setting? And the answer to that question came mainly from the assistance of the federal funds in the form of GEAR, ESSER 1 and 2, and now ARPSR. We've worked closely with the Department of Education, as a commissioner, Associate Commissioner Kenny spoke about earlier, who, as you know, has been the agent of distribution for these federal assistance funds. Some of the assistance was left to local decision making, while other funds were distributed to KDE for them to utilize. I want to say that I'm very pleased with how KDE chose to spend their portions to provide even further assistance to local school districts. So throughout this past school year, we've worked to provide the resources our teachers need in order to reach every student. Prior to last March, in Johnson County, we had worked to bring a one-to-one Chromebook initiative to our district, and we had been successful in that implementation for grades 3 through 12. But once we had to close our schools to face-to-face instruction last March, we immediately realized that our Chromebook initiative was not sufficient, as we had hundreds of kindergartners, first graders, and second grade students without access to devices at home. Without those devices, our instruction was even more complicated. So with that in mind, and with the announcement of the first rounds of the federal assistance funds, we secured Chromebooks quickly to provide each student in our district with a device. And that purchase greatly increased our opportunities for our students throughout the current school year as well. Additionally, we purchased many online products to assist with student learning, including products like Nearpod that offer social and emotional units and instructional tools that engage our students in learning, MyOn, which is a personalized reading program for students, Planbook that allow our teachers to collaboratively plan virtually, Exact Path reading and math assessment and instruction, and Google Enterprise, which enhances our Google Workspace to streamline instruction, makes collaboration easier, and adds security to our digital environment. Also, the KDE digital learning team, who's led by Associate Commissioner David Couch, stepped in and provided a lot of support as well. Specifically, I want to talk about their efforts in helping us streamline our enrollment process. So as you all are probably aware, every district utilizes Infant Campus, which is a student information system that houses all of our records from enrollment through graduation. This past year, Associate Commissioner Couch and his crew used portions of the federal relief funds to help us purchase online registration for every student in Kentucky, every district in Kentucky. This would have been helpful at any time, but this year it was extremely impactful as we all struggled to try to work around obtaining all the required student information without the use of paper. So we recognize how important effective communication would be during this time of uncertainty. As our plans were being built, information changed and data was released concerning the pandemic. So we saw the need for a consistent form of communication that allowed all of our stakeholders to be on the same page. We also knew that people receive their information from a variety of different sources. So with all that in mind, we developed a communication plan to provide that consistent message. Using these ESSER funds, we purchased Remind, which is an online communication tool for classroom, school, and district use. Additionally, we purchased a renewal of Apogee that encompasses our webpage and school app. We use this online program to push out updates and to post consistent messages to our school and our district social media pages. So with all the support to purchase these resources, we were able to provide adequate and suitable opportunities for our students as much as feasible. But we also knew that there's absolutely no replacement for face-to-face instruction, and that many of our students are going to return to school with gaps. So with that knowledge, we're aware that more resources will be needed to support our students in intervention, enrichment, and core Tier 1 instruction. We've researched and purchased additional instructional resources that were going to be used for our K through 12 school. We used them in actually our school in the summer opportunity that we just finished up, and then we'll be using them in the upcoming years, including a new reading and math series that both fully integrate digital resources, Rise and Rise Up reading intervention program, complete with online resources for struggling students, and a universal screener, iReady, for grades K through 8, that does contain an adaptive online assessment that will provide our teachers with actionable insight into student needs and online instruction to assist students target their learning gaps. And we also purchased MAP for our high school students. With our plan to return 5 days a week for our students in the 21-22 school year, we also recognize our need to update our classroom technology tools. We utilized a portion of the federal assistance funds to purchase 75-inch interactive flat panels for every classroom in our district. These panels will help our teachers increase student engagement, as our students will be able to interact directly and remotely with the panels. The classroom improvements also include enhancement of audio and cameras for our teachers so that they can record lessons and store them in a digital repository. As I've spoken about today, KDE was allotted federal assistance funds to utilize from the state level. Seeing the need for instructional technology support during the last school year, KDE's digital learning coach, Laura Raganos, rolled out the digital learning coach stipend opportunity to DLCs and discussed the importance of coaches in supporting teachers. At that time, we in Johnson County had one full-time DLC, but with the assistance of the stipend, we were able to add an additional part-time DLC that supported our teachers during this much-needed transition to online learning. During the course of last year, I witnessed both the need for support by our teachers and the impact that the Johnson County DLC coaches had on our district. So keeping that in mind, that our district has approximately 3,400 students and over 520 staff members, we absolutely pushed those 2 DLCs, or one full-time and one part-time, beyond their limits. I quickly saw that we had a need for more DLCs. Along with what I witnessed, the words of Associate Commissioner Couch stood out to me, as he always discusses the importance of the people side of technology integration. And so when ESSER funding was made available, it was a perfect opportunity for us to add additional DLCs, one for each of our schools in our district. So we're going to have one coach stationed at each of our schools, and they will be instrumental in coaching teachers, administrators, and providing personalized professional learning that will directly impact student engagement and achievement. Our JC DLCs are going to continue to develop their instructional practices as they participate in local, regional, state, and national meetings. So today I've given you a high-level overview of how the federal assistance funds have been utilized in Johnson County to increase opportunity and access for our students. I wholeheartedly believe that one of my main roles is to remove barriers for our teachers so that they can in turn remove barriers in their classrooms and reach every student whom we have the privilege of serving. And these funds have certainly given us a path to provide many much needed resources that will allow just that, the removal of those barriers. We're very fortunate to have these funds for resources, and we're thankful for the opportunities that they have provided. In closing, I want to again thank you for your time today, and I do want to assure you that all of us are utilizing these funds for the betterment of every child. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Do we have any questions? Representative McCool.
Mr. Chair, I don't have a question. Just want to make a quick comment. I want to thank Superintendent Tom Cochran and his staff for doing for putting their efforts towards students first, and just done an outstanding job. So thank you, Superintendent, and all your staff.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with no further questions, I would like to thank all of our guests today, Associate Commissioner Kenny, and we appreciate your report, and all the superintendents, Ms. Ballinger, Dr. Barber, Mr. Robbins, Mr. Cochran, and also Dr. Shutt, the Assistant Superintendent, Davis County. This is what we were looking for. We needed information about what was going on. We know that times are a lot different. We know that last year has been stressful for everybody in every area, but we also know very much it's been stressful for school administrators, school teachers, school staff, students, and parents. And it's been a very stressful year. And as Ms. Ballinger mentioned earlier, maybe we've learned some things during this that we can use in the years to come that will make education more productive for our students, because that's why we're there. We're there for our students and to help them learn in a way that they will be productive citizens and people who are able to enjoy their lives. So thank you all very much for doing that today. And we finished 3 minutes before our time limit, so we've got it in, and we appreciate all the committee members being here also. Thank you. Motion to adjourn.